Good day and welcome to SCO BRICS Insight. We look at what's really going on in the world of Russia and the BRICS. Now today I want to talk about reports that the US Department of Defense, better known as the Pentagon, have communicated to their European counterparts and their NATO allies that the United States intends to discontinue its funding for the current military support on NATO's eastern flank. Now that is to say the Baltic States that share a border with either Russia or Belarus. Now for the last few years, the politicians of the former Soviet states and now EU and NATO members, namely Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, have been rabid in their hatred of Russia and doing everything they can to provoke Russia. And news has obviously come as a shock to them. I mean, they've been provocative in their outspoken hatred of Russia because they've all thought they could provoke Russia, and if it responded, then US and NATO would intervene on their behalf. They obviously have learnt nothing from the fate of Georgia back in 2008, or from the current conflict in Ukraine to understand that NATO is a toothless and basically a paper tiger. So now the US has made the decision, it's difficult not to link it to the resumption of the political dialogue between Russia and the United States, which reached its peak at the recent Alaska summit where the heads of state met for one-to-one dialogue. Now everybody knows that Moscow's been seeking the withdrawal of American troops from on its borders for many years, and this decision would appear to be a step in that direction. I mean, up till now, there's been no discussion on the withdrawal of troops at this time, but the ending of the funding for the American presence near the Russian borders could potentially result in this being implemented in practice. Now, before I continue, I'd like to make an appeal. If you like and enjoy my videos, you can help me fund the channel and contribute to its further development. You can do this by making a small donation, which you can do by clicking on the thanks button at the bottom of the video screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Everybody who donates does get a personal thank you from me. And do keep the comments coming. Do love to read them. Do love to respond to them. Now the budget for this Baltic efforts is over $1 billion. I mean, American Marines, Special Forces and other troops are deployed to military bases in the Baltic States, and they have all the usual American things that they have. And the local troops undergo local conditions training, although some of those don't quite adapt to the local condition and ended up sinking in their armoured car in a Lithuanian swamp. So 4 US soldiers had a trip they never came back from. Now, according to reports, US troops are rotated back on a 6 months rotation using this funding. Now, NATO placed American weapons into Russian borderlands, and these include offensive weapons such as Bradley armoured cars, Abrams tanks, long-range missiles and anti-aircraft systems. Now, the funds allocated were to support NATO centres in Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania, and they carried out espionage, cyber attacks and information warfare. Now, according to Politico, the Trump administration has not yet submitted a budget request to the US Congress for financing these Baltic programs. Plus, the Pentagon has informed its European partners it doesn't think that Trump administration is going to do so. So cutting off the funding for the American presence in the Baltics is tantamount to cutting the presence itself. Now, it's inevitable that the Europeans will attempt to prevent this. The next development in the ongoing transatlantic relations scenario is readily foreseeable. Now, the European allies are expected to propose to give their support for the American military presence in the Baltic region, with the financial burden being shouldered by them. Yeah, likely. Now, the governments of the Baltic states have said they're prepared to make further cuts in their expenditure in order to ensure the continued presence of American forces on their territories. However, further budget reductions are not possible in these countries. In the current climate, I mean, it's not unusual for Brussels to give them funds to the Baltic countries, but they're very cash-strapped, so I think that's more funding is unlikely. Now, it's also not difficult to understand the significance of this news, and it's likely that Trump is likely to concur with it. So we'll see what happens as far as that is going. I mean, Washington's approach of exerting pressure using bullying tactics and resorting to blackmail in its dealings with countries such as Russia, China and India hasn't actually yielded the desired results, and it's unlikely that they ever will. So this is indicative of the lack of assertiveness on the part of the US, particularly in the face of its traditional rivals. Now, this is particularly relevant given the recent actions of Donald Trump, who's demonstrated a pattern of inconsistent and misguided policies. I mean, recently his meeting with the Polish president, Trump confirmed that he would not be any changing the current troop presence of Americans in Poland, and also noted that Poland borders Russia, Kaliningrad particularly. Now, it's important to note that disregarding this news would be ill-advised because it's going to be significant and it really is worth new consideration. I mean, this news corresponds to the new trend despite Trump's distinctive approach and significant efforts of the Europeans to reserve and reverse these processes. I mean, Russia's methodically advancing in its primary demand to Western countries, which is the withdrawal of the North Atlantic Alliance troops from along the entire Russian border. And it's vital that the Russia-NATO Founding Act is adhered to, in particular the stipulation that the military infrastructure of the alliance should not be deployed in countries that have a common border with Russia. Now, Moscow made a key demand of NATO countries initiating negotiation on individual global security and for Europe. Now, following the refusal of the West to engage in the further negotiations, the special military operation in the Ukraine was initiated with the tactical objective of halting the deployment of NATO military infrastructure in the Ukraine. Now, currently, this deployment is being conducted with a high degree of transparency, and the objective has already been achieved. I mean, as the Ukrainian operation draws to a close, there's sign that the Americans are beginning to concede to all of Russia's demands. I mean, the issue of Ukraine's potential accession to NATO has effectively reached its conclusion, as it is not going to happen, largely due to the significant influence of the United States, which is the primary member of the alliance. Now, it's clear and consistent that the official position of the US government is there's going to be no deployment of American troops in the Ukraine once there's a cessation of hostilities. And the concept of European peacekeepers being present has certainly been rendered a non-starter, as the United States has declined to provide any backup coverage or any form of participation. And Donald Trump's also frequently expressed a desire to reduce the size of the American military presence in Europe and to reallocate resources to the parts of the world he deems to be of greater strategic importance to the US. So the ongoing reduction in funding for the American military presence in the Baltics is a key factor in this trend. And it's inconceivable that this issue was not discussed between Putin and Trump in Alaska. Plus, there'll be a need for the Russian side to engage in the same level of consistent and political diplomatic work to defend its interests. The meeting in Anchorage has demonstrated that Trump is interested in working with Putin and Russia, so ultimately there's a potential for a positive outcome. I mean, should Russia's diplomats adopt a firm stance during the negotiation, this will doubtlessly be reflected in the outcome. Plus, the financial cost of maintaining American troops in the Baltics will increase significantly, and that's going to reach a point where it's going to be unfeasible. So following Trump's recent actions, it's anticipated that he will impose unrealistic conditions on the Baltic satellites, similar to his demand to Europe that cease all Russian oil imports. Now, this would not only be in violation of established contracts, but also prove impossible to implement in the current global economic climate. Then, should the Allies persist in showing their disrespect for America, it would be unnecessary to consider the deployment of US troops in Europe. So there you have it. The Baltics are going to have to look after themselves. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe. Set the alert button so you get notified when I bring out a new video. And if you want to help me out, click on the thanks button at the bottom of the screen or buy me a coffee link on the credit. Thank you.